Hello, today I'll be working with releases, and the focus will be how to build a release that can be used during deployment, or that can be used that can be used in a production machine. So I'll be following this guide, the deploying with releases, which I will attach in the description section. So if you're new to Phoenix and you don't have a Phoenix application, uh, they have provided a very simple and easy steps in which you can get started. So releases allows you to pre-compile and package your source code into a single unit. This single unit is a directory which includes the Erlang VM, the Elixir, your source code, and the dependencies. So one important thing that I've realized with the releases is that since it includes the Erlang VM and Elixir, when deploying this release to your production machine or to your server, you will not need to install the Elixir or Erlang. First step that I will take is to assemble the release. I'll be following this guide to the end. So let's learn together. First, we need to set up the environment variable as described here. The first thing is we need to run this task command so that we can generate the secret. Then we also need to export the secret key base and export the database URL. Let's get started with the environment variable first. To generate the secret, go to your terminal and run that task command. If your application had not compiled before, it will first compile it. We have to wait for the compilation to finish for the secret key to be generated. So I have the secret key. I'll just copy it because we need to export it. One thing when it comes to exporting an environment variable, if there are more than one, I usually prefer to create .env file. So in here I've created .env.local file. This is it, and I had already added the environment variable. So just write it export secret key base and pass your secret that you have generated. Then we also need to pass the database URL. The database URL has a format. This is the format that the database URL use. I'm using the localhost database. If you go to the dev section where the database has been configured, it has the username, the password, the hostname, the database. So let me paste this URL here just to explain how the format works. So we have the ecto started, then the user refers to the username, so you need to replace this user with the username. The pass refers to the password, so the username and password has the same naming. The host refers to the host name, so you need to replace that with the localhost. And the database refers to the database that has been configured here. That is what I've passed to the .env.local file. Then next, what is the next? So before we jump to the next step, let us source the exports that we have added. Now run this command source, then pass the .env. So this will save you the hassle, and also it's easier not to forget to export something if there are many exports that needs to be added to your machine. Then the next step is to load the dependencies to compile code and assets. To load the dependency, we use the mix deps.get. And because we want to load the dependencies for production, we refer to the we are telling it to only load the dependencies for prod environment. We need to load the dependencies for the prod environment. The next step we need to do is to compile. For it to know that we need to compile in the production environment, we need to specify the mix env equals to prod. Then run the mix compile. Whenever compilation happens, if you go to the build, you'll see that your source code has been compiled. The next step we need to do is to compile the assets. We are also compiling the assets in prod environment, so we'll do the same thing, specify the environment, then run mix assets.deploy. So the first, what is happening, it's downloading Tailwind, so we need to wait for it to download Tailwind first. Okay, it's now downloading ESBuild. So it has just completed compilation of the assets. So the digested files have been added to the priv static. So let's just look. So these are the digested file added to the static, and you can see that they have been added here. So these are the files that have been added. So next we need to run the mix phxgen.release task. Let's see what this does. So the task generated a few files for us to assist in releases. That the overlay script that are created here, the server. So it will be convenient for running a Phoenix server inside a release, and the migrate will be convenient for invoking migrations from a release. So basically it will help us in a way around the releases. Then the release file that is generated is used to invoke the ecto migration without a dependency on mix itself. So that is mix phx .gen .release, Yeah, so we have the overlay script created. So that is the server bat, migrate bat, and the release file. So first let's look where this file has been added. This is the prod. So let's see where the files have been added. So I've found the server. Then where is the release file? So the release is, let's see where the release file has been. So we have this release file used for executing DB release task when run in production without mix installed. Then your application is ready to be deployed in a release. Okay, so we haven't yet deployed our application in a release. So here are some useful release commands you can run in any release environment. So to build a release, we need to run mix release. To start your system with the Phoenix server running, we can start with this command. To run migration, we run this command for migration. Then once the release is running, you can connect to it remotely. To list all commands, we run this. The first thing I will do is just go to a new tab. Okay, so I've exported the environment variable. If you go to a new tab, the environment variable will not be recognized, so you have to export it again. So I want to follow this command. So the first thing we are told to build a release, run mix release. Next we can invoke mix release to build the release. So let's build our release. So you can see it's assembling the event 0.1.0. So the event here is the event, it's the project name. Then 0.1.0, it is the project version. So if you go to your mix, if you go to the mix file, you will see that we have the app as the event and the version as 0.1.0. So this project has been assembled. So this version has been assembled to the prod environment. Then here we are told using config runtime.ex to configure the release at runtime. So this is the file that will be used to configure the release during runtime. And if you go to runtime file under config, so this is the runtime file. So we are told here it's executed for all environment, including during releases. Then here we are told releases created at. So this is the folder where our release has been created. Let's go to that folder, or we can do build, then releases allows you to pre-compile your code and package it in a single unit, and this single unit is a directory. So this is the directory that I was referring to, where all of your source code has been packaged through. So this is where the release has been created. Then we are told to start your system. To start your system, we need to run this command. Okay, so we have here an information logged. So configuration server was not enabled for event web.endpoint. So the HTTP or the HTTPS services won't start. So we are not able to start the server, the HTTP services, that is, and we need to understand why. So first of all, let's look at this runtime. So here we are told the runtime is executed for all environment, including during releases. If we are getting this error, which refers to the configuration, the first thing that I have to look at is the runtime. So let's look at this information that we're given here. So it is executed after compilation and before the system starts. So it's typically used to load production configuration and secrets for environment variables or elsewhere. Do not define any compile time configuration in here, as it won't be applied. The block below contains prod specific runtime configuration. So using releases, if you use the mix release, you need to explicitly enable the server by passing the phx server true when you start it. So I have used the mix release, so that means I have to explicitly enable the server. Okay, let's continue. Alternatively, you can use the mix phx.gen release to generate a bin server script that automatically sets the env variable above. So we are told if you're using mix release, we need to explicitly pass the phx server to true, because if it gets the phx server, we have the configuration for the server, but if we don't, it fails, and this is the information we are getting because the phx server has not been passed. Using the phx.gen.release, it generates a bin server. Let's look at this bin server first. The server, this has been set. That means that if we run this bin server, we don't have to worry about this. But now we are running the start command, and because we are running the start command, let's copy this, because we need to explicitly enable the server. We are running the start command. I don't know if it will recognize this or I have to pass the full path. So before I pass this full path, from build to event, let's see if it will recognize the bin. So no such file or directory. Now it's working. So if we go to this endpoint, you can see that we can see this page. So this is always the default domain that is provided. So let's stop our server from running, so I don't have to close it. So let's stop it from running. Then if you go here, you can see that we have shut it down.